Hello, movie fans. Demetri here for Popcorn Talks Anatomy of a Movie, where today, get your vroom on as we talk Cars 3.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Yo, hey everybody, hey movie fans. Welcome to another Anatomy of a Movie. We got our energy is up, levels are up.
It is.
I've got great co-hosts with me today whose energy always brings me up. Why don't we start by introducing them and saying hello, far right.
Hello everyone, I'm Marisa Serafini.
Hi, I'm Becca Brown.
Welcome back, Becca. You seem to
Becca
come
returns.
on. She returns for yet another Disney
Yes.
film.
Ones.
Like a child film.
And today we're going to be talking about the most recent Pixar release of Cars 3. I'm wicked excited to actually talk about this particular movie in this franchise. So we always open up with opinions. So I'm going to start off with my lovely co-hosts, starting with you, Marisa. What did you think of Cars 3?
I really enjoyed this one compared to Cars 2. This one, seriously should have been called Cars 2 because it was so much better. This should have been the sequel. I liked how it progressed in the right side of history, the 21st century. It's like we have stronger women characters in this movie, which I also enjoyed. And the storyline is relatable because it talks about the older generations and growing, getting older, and are you as good as you were back in your prime? So I think a lot of people can relate to that, but it still appeals to the older generation and also the newer generation too, which I feel like the first two movies were definitely male. It's definitely male centric. There are some females here and there, but it's definitely geared towards boys, not really girls.
Sure.
And I felt this one definitely spans more to, females can watch this, girls can enjoy this one. And I think that this movie makes the whole franchise better.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Becca.
When they said they were making a Cars 3, I was kind of like, okay, don't have much faith in this. But
Because
then
of Cars 2?
Yeah, but then I saw
Fair enough.
Then I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, down to see it, and I wasn't disappointed at all by it.
Right.
I was blown away. Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Best
I
movie
mean,
I've seen in a while.
I have to say that Cars is actually one of my favorite Pixar movies, the original, because I love its themes and how it marries the themes of self-realization, coming into oneself, growing up. Growing up is a big theme, I think,
older.
in Cars and Cars 3.
Yeah.
One is being the youngster and learning and training. But the other thing that I loved about Cars was its love for Americana. And the old Americana, the Route 66, and that nostalgia that, these are roads that don't exist anymore because of progressiveness. So that's what I loved about Cars, how it melded that, And like some of the best sports movies, it proves that winning isn't exactly everything. And then when we talk Cars 2, sort of kind of traded out heartwarming themes for pizzazz, and for me it failed miserably. It was an exercise of style over substance, and that to me, Cars 2 is when the law of averages finally had caught up with Pixar, because to me it's still the lowest of on the ladder of Pixar movies. That one's in the bottom rung.
It's in the last movie out of everybody's list. Maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but for the most generalists, this is the lowest rated Pixar. Cars 2 was the lowest.
It was the
rated
first time
Pixar
they
movie.
delivered a lemon. All
Yeah.
pun intended. I mean, really, when
True.
you look at their history up until Cars 2, kids loved Cars 2, but there was just nothing there. So, but thankfully, with Pixar, Cars 3 comes out and it gets back on track. And for me, it may not be quite as good as the original, right, with the heart and the nostalgia. However, it does have wonderful thematic heights. It leaves Cars 2 in the dust. And I agree with you. This should have been Cars too. Like, they should have done that. And I love the themes of watching the world literally drive you by while trying to figure out your place in this new world and growing up. It sort of kind of has, believe it or not, I was thinking of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where Kirk is getting older and he's like trying to see, where do I fit in this world? This is what Lightning McQueen is kind of going through, like you were saying. Those are great sports themes, right? And we'll talk about sports movies, but those are what make really good sports movies, is having that. And it honors your past and how your past fits into your future. And I love that. And at the same time, it delivered fun new characters. I loved the new characters in this movie, and it spreads the love to those who've been along for the ride the whole way through. So, yeah, there was really lots to love about this, and kids, as you were saying, I don't know, kids, when I saw it, I've seen it twice. Each time, packed house, ton of kids, and they all cheered, which is weird. I've been to a lot of kids' movies, right? But they usually don't cheer at the end. And they cheered at this. And I was like, oh, this movie's working if kids are cheering. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so.
My theater wasn't packed, but at the end, everyone did cheer. So.
And how about you?
Oh, my theater was packed. I went on a typical civilian Friday night, and I had a kid on both sides of me. Yeah.
Yeah. And they liked it?
They loved it. And, like, both of them were boys, so... And, of course, I had to deal with the boy kids who were loving this film.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about basically the genesis of this movie. And in part, Cars 2 had a lot with Cars 3 coming in. It's almost like... You can almost say Cars 3 is like an apology for Cars 2, even though Cars 2 made a ton of money. But going back thematically, they realized that maybe Cars 2 making it so Mater-centric. And I got nothing against them.
I love
but
Mater.
that's the thing. I think the main storyline was Mater in Cars 2. And, he's a fun, lovable character. But his character is only tolerable for so long.
A little goes a long way.
Yeah, honestly.
Agreed.
And, Larry the Cable Guy is funny, and to Mater is funny. But watching his character for a full hour and a half is a lot.
It was a lot.
Most adults will check out in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I wanted, and again, nothing against the character. It wasn't his fault. Nothing against Larry the Cable Guy, who's the perfect voice. He gives personality to Mater. But the way that it was set up in Cars is that Mater and Lightning were such close friends. I had hoped that friendship was going to continue more so. And it sort of kind of didn't. There was very little Lightning McQueen outside of the races, but Mater had to figure out what's going on. And
and there was also a disconnect in the Cars 2. Like, they had a falling out. Of course, like every good friendship had a falling out for a short amount of time.
Sure.
And then, it had all the beats of what you would expect in a friendship type of movie.
Yeah, but they made it a spy flick. So, Becca, you were going to say?
I almost feel like Cars 2 was rushed a little bit, like the story based on the success of the first Cars.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was rushed. I forget how many years it was. I mean, because here's the thing. It's been 10 years since...
That's
a little
insane.
over 10 since the original Cars...
It's been 12 years since the first one.
Which is crazy. The time has gone by so fast. So, but I liked how Keel Murray says what... They wanted to go back, and they really wanted to make it resonate with audiences, especially adults. And it's the idea of finding meaning as we age and finding a way to be valuable in every phase of our lives, he says, and giving back to the next generation in a way we don't ever think about. And Cars 3 is filled with that as well. So, what are your thoughts on the new theme and going into how the concept of this movie? Like, did you enjoyed how they sort of kind of went back to, like, let's go back to what made Cars so popular and come up with a new theme.
Yeah, I liked Cars 3 and what they did for, like, the female storyline, because in Cars 1 we got a female storyline with Sally, and Sally, like, taught McQueen, like, the ways of this is how you relax and this is how you actually enjoy driving, and then and then, like, I like the update to the 21st century type of mentality of let's give a woman a chance. Let's give her a motivation and actual chance in the world to compete with men. I was like, I love this.
Yeah.
The first line, and we'll get into Cruz's character, but when she first says, like, I always wanted to be a racer, and, like, I'll never know what it's like going to be racing, I was like, she's going to be in the race. I knew it. That was that was predictable, like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it because NASCAR is mostly known for men. There are some famous female drivers.
I agree.
But it's very rare to have a good, successful female driver.
And she was voiced perfectly, I thought.
She was voiced.
And you're right. It was, again, it was one of the fun new characters that comes into this movie and how the quote-unquote trainer is being trained. But she was a really great addition into this Cars universe, I think. I agree with you 100%. We'll get into the plot machinations of how she gets into the race and how she becomes to be a racer. But it was a very welcome addition to me in how things switched. And I liked her character so much that maybe we can get a Cars 4 with Lightning and she, and we'll see what, I don't know. It could be, I think it would be very, I would like to see that relationship. I'd like to see how that relationship unfolds. And they'll, if they do it with the right kind of heart, you'll have a winner, like an absolute winner. And you'll grab, as you said, more of the girls to come in. I can tell you this for a fact. They have so much stock in this character. I'm an annual pass holder to Disney, so I go.
Take me with you.
Yeah, take me too.
Yeah, I go about once a week. No lie. They've added Cruz, Ramirez, and Carsland. Like Carsland. So for those who don't know, like you can look it up. But Carsland is a 2-scale built land that is Radiator Springs, and they actually have the car characters. You can see Mater, Lightning, and now Cruz, Ramirez, the fire truck. They're driving around, and they talk. And it's crazy. It's Disney magic. But they've added Cruz, Ramirez. So there's a lot of stock in that character. And I was like going, that's awesome, because I had no idea. So,
I mean, Sally was a great female character too, but she wasn't a race car driver.
She wasn't. She was just a Porsche.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's
And she was the love. And she was the love interest. That was actually for me when we're talking about scenes. We'll get back into production, but I like the scene since you're talking about Sally. When Lightning's going off, he's going to the new training center, to the new Rusty's training center, and they're saying their goodbyes, and she actually says to him, "I love you," and he's like, "Yeah, I love you," and I was like, that was sweet, because you don't, outside of the parental bond and Finding Doors, something like that, romantically, I can't recall, even in Toy Story with Jessie and stuff, I can't recall somebody saying, I love you, like that. And I just thought it was a very sweet moment that was nice. So
Inside Out definitely had strong parental influence.
Yeah. Parental, absolutely. So it was nice to see the little romantic bond grow, in which she says, I love you. I just really like that. So.
Going back to the Carsland thing, I was actually watching the movie and the scenes that take place in Radiator Springs, and I was like, wow, they did good with Carsland.
Yeah, they do an amazing job. So,
I've been in Carsland.
It's amazing. The neon, I'm not. Disney doesn't pay me, but again, I go, like I said, often. I go about once a week there, and I'm always in Carsland. So when I see Carsland, when I see Radiator Springs in the movie, I go, oh, I feel like coming home. It's like I've been there. So I want to talk about mentoring, because that's a big deal in this movie. Mm-hmm. It's one of those themes that I think is great that they go back to. In the first Cars, we have the Fabulous Hudson Hornet, right? Doc Hudson, right? And we learn about Fabulous, which I love, because you never get a sense that Doc Hudson, as voiced by the wonderful, great Paul Newman, you never got a true sense that he was ever cocky like Lightning McQueen is at the beginning of Cars. But when we learn about him, he goes, oh, he put Fabulous on his thing from the day he showed up, here. I liked how it was this invisible passing of the torch, so to speak, right?
Also, and it was just showing another similarity from Doc and McQueen. Like, they are really, like, alike, and they're the same kind of person.
Yes. Yeah, and they have good hearts. So the mentoring, which I think is a common theme in Cars and Cars 3, this baton gets passed, but it's through a self-realization, which I like that. I really enjoy that the character, it comes organically within the character, but it's such a big theme because that's, in a sense, what you can impart, right? What did you feel about the mentorship, that mentoring plot line, in a sense? Yeah, it is a plot line.
I think there were so many parallels throughout the movie because even at the end, Lightning goes to find Doc's mentor. Mm-hmm. And I thought I think I'm getting a little off.
The parallel,
I thought the
through line?
The Doc flashbacks were really cute.
Yeah.
They made me. It was
makes you nostalgia.
It was that's the right word. Nostalgia.
How about you? I'm going to ask you, Marisa, because you said something before we started this about, like, you're the woman who keeps the men in line here, right? I want to say this because through the doors of the AfterBuzz Studios, right? Mm-hmm. There's always a fresh group of people coming in to talk about whatever new television show on, right? So, Marisa, you've been here since close to the beginning of time, like for AfterBuzz, and I mean this in a great way. You yourself impart, like, a lot of your wisdom and knowledge and your experience. I mean, even when I first came here, I took a lot from you as well. Mm-hmm. So you in a sense take that role for AfterBuzz too, right? Yeah,
I agree.
Right? I mean,
Thank you.
So, but when you relate it to Cars 3 or even Cars, I mean, I want your thoughts on, because in a sense you do that for people, and you yourself, you keep on gaining more experience.
Right, and that's what I loved about, like, the storyline, because I think they did it so well in this one, especially coming from, like, a male-female perspective. Of course, you're going to naturally get that pushback.
Right.
Right at the beginning, and of course, it's always, like, the student, quote-unquote, which is McQueen now, because the Cruz is the trainer. There's always, like, that person who's resistant to change, or just, like, wants to, like, how's the fastest way I can get, skip all the middlemen and, like, get right to the end results. And it's like, no, you actually have to properly train, and you're always going to get that person who just wants to cut corners and just get there. I like that because it showed that the woman was already, like, set, but it also shows, like, McQueen, with his personality, that, like, he's like, no, I know everything. I know what it's like to race. You don't, because you're just a trainer. So, like... Right. I thought that was very believable. Mm-hmm. But just because you're the student doesn't mean, and also and vice versa, just because you're the teacher doesn't mean you can learn something from your student.
Of course.
And I think we got both, a good balance of both.
I agree.
Especially when it came to the actual physical, technical aspects of training on the tracks, like especially when they're on the beach, which we'll get there. Like, no, you have to put your feet in and dig a hole before you
got to get your tires dirty.
Yeah, and then even with drifting, like, you got to turn left to go right.
Right.
And like Cruz was like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing.
Right.
And she's the trainer, so like there was a nice balance of keeping each other, like the check and balance system.
I agree.
That these two had it.
And it built organically, so that when the ending comes, you might sort of be taken aback, but when again, seeing it twice too, I was like, yeah, that just happened. That was such an organic flow that of course it makes sense of what's happening. So Becca, you were going to say something, and then I want to move on to talk about characters for a bit, other ones.
I like that based off the interactions of the two characters of Cruz and Lightning, that they both, like, helped each other grow by the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like,
which is
people here help me grow.
But it's smart, because that's the way life is.
Yeah.
And Cars is such a parallel to
life,
to the real world, in a sense. And those are the themes too that makes me fall in love with the original Cars. So I want to talk about some of the new characters. We're obviously gonna talk a lot about Cruz, but I definitely want to talk about Jackson Storm is voiced by Armie Hammer.
Yeah.
You know,
Of course, he's the new guy.
and we have a
up-and-coming
picture. He's
rookie.
he's a new guy, but he is also a sign of things to come.
But like,
within
if you
the
think about it, in the first Cars, Lightning McQueen was the rookie.
Yeah,
and
he
he was the
was.
cocky one.
Yeah,
winning
Yeah.
all the races. So it makes sense that McQueen's kind of getting a little bit of taste of his own medicine,
Sure.
and it's kind of like sweet revenge in a way.
Yeah, and you know he's a cool looking car, and if he wasn't such a jerk, you'd be wow, he's a cool car. Armie Hammer, I thought, was a perfect choice to voice him. Because
He's a cool looking
he's
guy.
sort of kind of like he's sort of kind of like too. He was he could say things. It was like a backhanded compliment. Like he would say things that are nice, but they're really not nice. That even Lightning's like, wait, what did you? Oh, that's not nice.
I'm still impressed with the
good.
"nice to beat you" line because I was like, wait, what did he say?
Did you say Pete or meat? Yeah,
You.
I was like that too.
yeah. What did you think of him as a villain, Marisa?
I liked him because even like the color scheme of Sterling is so far opposite of McQueen. Like,
Well,
McQueen's
Sterling
that red.
or Jackson Storm.
Oh, yes.
We'll get to Sterling in a sec.
All the nice, pretty cars that we see in this movie. Sorry, Jackson Storm.
Yeah.
Like he's dark, light. Now also with the lightning. If you thought that there was a thunderbolt on him, so like obviously he's the new, better version of McQueen.
Right.
So, and the color scheme is so far opposite of McQueen. You're like, oh, this is a guy who's already gonna be foil to McQueen, which I enjoyed. And I
Yeah.
think because of Armie's Hammer, it's like such low, authoritative type of voice, completely fit the character.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And he's a welcome addition. And it's because he does play he's a good villain. And what's interesting about it, too, when you talk thematically, is that when you think about it, all these new technology, progress is happening. And a lot of the cars that McQueen came up with, which is a cool thing too. We'll get in one second. But all those cars, they're also retiring, or they're just quit. You know, they're getting out of the race, and it's made a point in the movie to point out to us that more and more of these newer cars are coming in.
Yeah.
The older cars are coming out. Here's something that I really like. That as I thought about it, I'm talking about the older cars, right? The people that McQueen came up with. They had, and I don't know if it's this way in NASCAR. If somebody can corroborate, who may be watching us now, maybe you can let me know. There's a camaraderie. There was a camaraderie amongst the racers. So if Lightning didn't win, right? They made fun, and there was that. there was the gag that they would be played upon during their interview, whether it's whipped cream or the inflatable tires. It's like, I'll get you back. I love that camaraderie.
I like that too, because in the first movie we didn't really get that. We saw like a kind of a healthy rival, but not really a friendship.
Right.
And in this
Yeah.
one, because they've raced together for so long, and after all these races, they're just friends now. And when you saw McQueen didn't win every race, but
Right.
like when he lost a race, and the other winners was like, good race, you know,
Good
like
race.
you show that they're just friends now. They're not really in it for the glory. They're just
Yes.
in it for the fun.
They're in it for racing.
Yeah, coming from a sports background and like knowing stuff about gymnastics, since my sister's in gymnastics and I used to be in gymnastics, I think that's another thing that imitates life, because once you compete with someone for a long time, you just become natural friends.
Do you?
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that in this movie. I enjoyed that McQueen was friends with the people that he was competing against, and there was a mutual admiration and respect for them. And you're right, in the first movie, it wasn't so much. I do want to talk about, so one of the characters in this movie, and if anybody has the answer, I would love to know. In Cars, we had Chick Hicks, who was the main rival, right? And he was voiced by Michael Keaton.
Yeah, he was.
And in this movie, it's this Bob Peterson.
Bob Peterson.
And again, I know it's 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
we have Cars on Blu-ray. That was a stark difference to me. I was like, that's not Michael Keaton. Was he busy filming Spider-Man? Like, what was he doing that he couldn't come back? Nothing against Bob Peterson. But it is also interesting that Chick Hicks still has that chip on his shoulder against Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's because he took the job, he's now an announcer and he's not racing, but he obviously doesn't have the camaraderie that Lightning does when he's on the track. And where Chick Hicks, to me, seemed like that bitter guy.
Yeah, I feel like you'll always have that one person who'll never forgive you, whatever
Yeah.
it is, no matter how many years have passed. And
Yeah.
I think like Chick Hicks is that character.
Yeah.
It didn't really bother me that the voice changed because I didn't
Yeah.
really realize.
I didn't realize it.
It's
Really?
been 11, 12 years
I
now.
know. I don't
okay.
know why. I just, that was something. That's not Michael Keaton. But it's talking about and another new character that we get in here. You had mentioned Sterling, as
Sterling. I liked Sterling.
as voiced by Nathan Fillion, which is a weird. To me, he walked this weird tightrope where Sterling. There he is with Sterling in that, Captain Brown coat, Captain Brown pants there, from Firefly, Nathan Fillion. Who, again, perfect voice casting. And I was wondering, is he really
See,
a bad guy? Like
that's the good thing
he
about
didn't seem totally duplicitous. But you know what I mean? Like he seemed sincere, but as the movie got on, he wasn't quite nice to Cruz or Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on this new character, Sterling?
I feel like he's the guy who doesn't realize that he's coming across the way he is.
we know so many people.
Yeah. Like,
Interesting.
I don't know how to go more into depth on that, but
Well,
there's people in life like that.
Well, but again, we're talking about when you talk about Jackson Storm, he knows he's a jerk.
Yeah.
He knows he's being full of
he's
himself.
full of
or in a sense, Sterling, he doesn't realize
How
what
he's coming across.
Right. What were your thoughts about?
Well, I think
Sterling?
the character fits with Nathan Fillion because I think Nathan Fillion, just in his acting roles, that he's so good at playing the likable guy, but you also kind of hate him at the same time.
You can, yeah.
But he's charming, but also yet deceiving at the same time. And I think that's what Sterling was like, and he seemed sincere at first. Even with the whole business plan that you're just a name and a brand and a product. Let's sell that because that's what's famous now, not because of your racing, but because of your product. But also, Nathan Fillion, he himself said that he thinks of Sterling as a $10,000 suit. Like a man in a suit. He's not a giant man that comes into a room and holds courts and demands everybody kiss his ring. He's not that kind of leader. He's a down-to-earth man and charming, and exactly the kind of person you figure should be running a company such as this.
Yeah.
I was like, I believe that. Nathan
Yeah, I
Fillion.
believe that too, and I also believed that, at least at the beginning with that character, I believe that he did have. Well, number one, I believe that he had Rusty's because he buys out Rusty's. Those two characters are fantastic, by the way. It was so good to see the Rusty's odors.
I love them.
I like them. But go ahead.
Oh, well, I was also thinking just as Sterling, you can see why, throughout the movie, you saw his actual true, genuine love and fanship for McQueen.
Lightning,
and that's okay, I actually want to sponsor you because I am a fan of you, and I know your brand, and I know what's good for you. And then that also explains why he was so short with Cruz, especially during the last final race, and he wanted Cruz out of there. It's no, he wanted to see McQueen.
Lightning succeed.
Because that's the person that he's representing, not Cruz. So it makes sense that he's very lovable towards McQueen, but very short with Cruz.
Yeah, and also I also took that scene too from Sterling as sort of kind of putting her down and putting her. Because the words were, "You're a trainer. You're not a racer." Because he said that at the beginning when he first introduced Cruz. No, she's not a racer. She's a trainer. So it's sort of kind of putting that in a place. So I sort of kind of took it as a little weird and rude, I should say. Not weird. Rude was the better word. But I do agree. At the beginning, I do agree that him buying Rusty's, and Rusty's, I also like where they say, you know what, he can give you what we can't, and he can give you better training. Was one of the reasons that they sold, and of course for lots of millions of dollars. But at the beginning, I did believe that Sterling had McQueen's best interest at heart. And it's like, look, man, and he goes, yeah, that's your concrete from your first race. He goes, I am a huge fan, and I want to see you succeed after.
Yeah.
It's just a different track. I think the way he was voiced by Nathan Fillion was perfect. And then towards the end, we know everything comes full circle as Rusty's was bought out again.
Yeah.
By Dynaco.
By Dynaco.
From the first movie.
I feel like at the end, Sterling's character kind of escalated fast because I was like, okay, I don't see anything really wrong with his character right now. He's just like a businessman blinded by money. And then at the end, I'm like, no, don't be talking to Cruz like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then our other new character is Smokey, is voiced by Chris Cooper. And he is the Jedi Master to the Fabulous Hudson Hornet, right? And I like.
We only had like Cooper. 2 lines from him, though.
But I like the go back to the guy who trained him. He's got to be a good guy, and I like going back to that racetrack and having him end up being his pit crew and going, what are you talking about? As Lightning's feeding him stuff as Ramirez is in the race. But I enjoyed having that character in it, and then we meet all the other old racers too, and they were doing all these old techniques of racing, which, Marisa, I'm going to bring this up now. I thought while watching Cars 3 was an amalgamation of Rocky movies.
Totally Rocky.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
Totally Rocky.
So we have the beach scene.
Yeah,
which is a great
totally
scene.
Rocky. You have the training montage on the beach. You go, just do it over and over again until you actually become the faster racer. I enjoy that, and also with the yellow color there, I just kept thinking like Rocky Balboa's shorts. I've seen that movie way too many times. I know, but I loved it because people men and women who love Rocky now are the parents of the kids right now, who are watching this. So I think that's the scene for the parents that would enjoy, because it is nostalgic to the Rocky movies, to any type of training montage movie.
And it had the beach scene is the most notable, right? But then it had the older guy training the younger, right, and taking over as a mentor, as a trainer. But then it had the old school way of training. Instead of using treadmills and simulator things, we're in fields with the tractors, and it's like go through the open window. It's like going old school to train the new kid on the block.
Which is so Rocky as well.
That's so Rocky, right?
It's like, we're going to
catch
tie
a chicken.
Strings around your foot so you can learn footwork.
Right. I mean, it was so Rocky in that. And where I couldn't find in any of my research any reference to Rocky, I was like, no, come on.
No, like, you're going to go swimming to exercise every muscle in your body.
All right.
I wasn't thinking of that before or coming in today, but I just typed in like Rocky and Cars 3. And
oh, did you?
There's a bunch of stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
It's totally.
The first is Cars 3 trailer. This is Pixar's version of Rocky 4.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of 3
all
and
of them.
4.
Because it's about handing over. And again, to me, it was really never about. Cars was not about winning. Because that's when our hero, Lightning McQueen, when one of his compatriots, colleagues, gets in a really bad crash, he goes over to help him out and get him across the finish line, right? It's a great ending. The original Rocky wasn't about winning. It was about making it through the entire race and getting, or the fight, I should say.
Yeah.
And just making it through all of the rounds. It's sportsmanship. That's one of the themes that I loved about Cars, and even this one now too, because it wasn't about winning for McQueen. Like, he just wanted her to have the chance to race, and he knew that she could compete, but he's like, you know what? It's time for me. She can do this. I want her to race. I want to put her in there, and it's a good scene, and again, it's growing up.
I did like the moment where like he had that realization in the race, because we had that like short montage of like all the moments when he was training with her out in like when they were off the field. He never beat her. Like she's the one who won the demolition tournament, and like always was outraced in the forest. You know, when they're going through the trees, like he realized that he's actually better than her.
Yeah.
Or she's better than him, and I like that realization. It's like, no, she's the one who should be racing.
Yes,
she's
a racer.
She's a racer.
She's a racer, and I've been training her to do this throughout the entire movie.
She can do it.
She can do this.
She has the exact same training as he does.
Yeah, and that's why to me. It's very organic the way that happened. I remember the first time I saw that. The first time I watched the movie, I did have this weird experience. And you tell me if you had something similar. Whereas I was going, wait, what's going on here? It's like because I sort of wanted Lightning to at least have his comeuppance. I wanted him to have his vindication that he can do this and then retire on his own. Like I figured he would end up training Ramirez, but it was this. I was like, oh. But how it ended, I was happy with. Your initial thoughts when he has that epiphany and goes off to the pit stop and tells her to come in. What were your thoughts on that switch over in the race?
Becca.
All right, Marisa.
I'm stumped right now. Hold on.
Okay. I'm seeing smoke, Becca. Come on. No.
I enjoyed it, especially because McQueen also had the added effort of making sure you blacked out Sterling and the other people who could hinder Cruz from racing. Like it was a character growth, but also like he had people helping him help her, and I really enjoyed that. And the fact that he was helping from the sidelines, but yet was still that integral character to the point where like, no, just give me the headphones and I'll take over and essentially step into that Doc role,
right?
Which we loved because we didn't really get Doc in this episode. In this movie, it's like we got like bits of him and like why we love Doc, and now why we love McQueen in that Doc leadership role.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I loved that we didn't really get the Doc part in the movie and that we did get the bits because that just made me emotional throughout the whole movie. I get cry during these movies. At first, when Cruz came into the story, I was like, wait, but this is Lightning.
Into the race.
Well, like, into the story. Like, just in general, I was like, wait, this is Lightning's, like, chance. He's trying to get another chance to be in the race. And I was kind of confused and
did you find that Cruz was threatening or?
I felt she was getting in the way at first, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. I love it.
Yeah, it's done very, very well, I think. And again, when I saw it the second time, knowing what was going to happen, and so I was looking for more cues. That's sometimes like when you're watching a good movie multiple times, and like there's an outcome, and when you watch it again, and you have that first experience through you, like over you, you can look for certain cues, and those cues are clearly in this movie.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Doc for 1 second, because there's something interesting I want to bring up. So a common trend today in live action movies is digitally changing people, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is common. We saw it in Guardians of the Galaxy, Rogue One, we talked about it, making people look younger. Mm-hmm. So in here we have Fabulous Doc Hudson, right? And they actually used outtakes of Paul Newman, and I believe Cars 3 may have been one of the last things that he had done prior to passing away. It didn't, because they weren't using his face. They weren't digitizing him and putting him on somebody's body. I didn't mind using the voice for the animated character if we were pulling outtakes. And I guess, too, there was a gentleman involved who also sounds, who did his voice as well. So they were using a combination, but a lot of it was outtakes. What were your thoughts on that?
I liked it, too, because watching the movie, I was questioning. I was like, why is Doc not in it? But also not realizing that, it's Paul Newman. I liked it because you can get away with that, that is the beauty of voice artists and like using just voiceover. You can put the voice with any type of visual character, and it worked well in this movie. Yeah. And it brought back a character that we loved from the first one.
It did. What are your thoughts, Becca?
It was weird seeing the the flashbacks and like the voice. Well,
Hearing the voice?
yeah, hearing the voice, and also,
Was it disconcerting to hear Paul Newman's voice
also,
like today?
I was kind of thinking about back to like 10, 11 years ago when I saw the movie for the first time. When I saw Cars for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was questioning why, because as a kid or at that age, I
was a kid.
I was like 11, 12.
So what were you
But
questioning?
I kind of saw him as a villain first in the movie, and I was like, how did I ever see that?
I get it. Yeah, I mean, no, for if you're a little kid, like he would come off as
Yeah,
being
he was scary at
like,
first.
'cause
And I'm
he's
like,
sort of-
oh,
He's the
I get
old
it.
grumpy man.
He's the old grumpy
Exactly.
man. He's the old grumpy man. You know,
Those are great movies too.
and grumpy,
old
they
man.
are. And they have
Both of
two.
them.
Yeah. You know, I also look at Cars 3 as a wonderful tribute to the great Paul Newman as well.
It was a good.
I mean, because they did it in such an affectionate way. And you can't complain about using outtakes of his voice because the character became so lovable in Cars. And I also like that they don't explain what happened to him. We get the hint. It doesn't have to be explained that he passed away. He's not there. So I thought it was a wonderful homage to Paul Newman through this character. And I really enjoyed that because there was nothing gratuitous about it. And the way that they built this character up, because we learned so much about him. And, you know, there was another great scene where Chris Cooper's character says, you know, one of the best parts of his life was you. Like, when he got in that car crash, much like Lightning McQueen ends up in his car crash, you know, things went south for him, and, you know, he went into seclusion because all these other rookies were coming up, and then he finds Lightning. And so when that line of dialogue comes up, he goes, he started writing me after 50 years. Like, I hadn't heard from him in 50 years. And he was sending, and you go into that room, and it's all Lightning McQueen and Doc. Mm-hmm. It's a very touching scene, and as much an ode to the character as it is to Paul Newman. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's very sweet.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So much so that I'm like thinking about it and crying here. So it's fine.
So, you know, story supervisor Scott Morse, they wanted to highlight the emotional core to this, which I believe they succeeded. Mm-hmm. And they focused on the relationship of the characters. Now, Scott Morse, he goes, you know, you don't have to be an aging athlete to understand Lightning McQueen's plight. Catch this. He goes, I'm at a point in my career here at Pixar where I'm not the young kid coming in. He goes, I was a 20-year-old intern who had a Lightning McQueen toy as a kid. They're good, better, looking for opportunity. But that doesn't mean we all step aside. We look for positives. So I just like when he likens himself working at Pixar. He goes, I'm no longer that. I was Lightning McQueen starting, you know, as
I was
a fan.
the rookie, you know.
So you have these people who've been with Pixar forever, who all have this same that resonance of they get the story, which I really liked. So, why don't we talk a little bit too about maybe some of the production and looking at how building this universe, because again, visually stunning, and I'm talking from not just the big things to this. I'm talking about some of the small things. There was when they were racing around the old track, Smokey's track, right?
Like
there's a scene that there's like just a puddle of water that they're going by, and there's like they're causing they're causing ripples in this water. That's a small scene. It was great. The beach scene, the ocean looked so much
like an ocean.
it was beautiful.
Looked real.
So something that was very interesting too, and I never really thought about it regarding doing a car. We talk about risks, which apparently this is something that Pixar, right? It's a rendering program used in animation So Jeremy Lasky, who's the director of photography for camera, faced this challenge where he says features on a human face appear in the same plane where they're facing the camera, right? So I'm looking at you, everything's all here. He goes, but with a car's mouth is like 6 feet in front of his eyes. Yeah. And, you know, from the windshield to the grill, we play a lot with angles to make sure the character is on model in every shot. We learned from the first 2 films, but we also pushed it to another level, bringing more energy to our shots and making everything feel more alive without distracting from what's going on in the story. And I never really thought about how you have to render something that isn't in that same playing field.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? I never thought of that.
Especially from different angles, you get Picasso, essentially.
You're right, it's cubism.
Exactly. But, like, I enjoyed it. I like how, you know, they take those details because, I mean, hello, this is Disney Pixar. But, you know, they take those details that people don't think about, and they had to model it with lighting, and because there's different angles to a certain face, how does the lighting go on to bounce off of it and reflect and all that properly as well?
Absolutely.
And still have the same functions as a human face.
Sure. And, you know, the other thing, too, is apparently there's risks since 2011 when Cars 2 was released, okay? Pixar Studios had updated its rendering system, and this is the introduction of a new renderer within the animation world, is both welcome and feared. What's really great about the new renderer RIS is that it's more physically accurate. So producing images that look like the real world is much easier, and particularly for cars, because obviously Radiator Springs is like Monument Valley and things. So they're setting it in the real world, and RIS presented the Cars 3 filmmakers with the opportunity. If you look, you were saying, if you look at a car in sunlight, you can see tiny concentric scratches and metallic flakes in the paint job. And, you know, they had Joylyn character shading supervisor. There's a character shading supervisor just for shading. You know, it's one thing that makes a car look like a car traditionally. It's been very difficult to do that. But with this Ritz, they're able to add those features into their shading. And I, as an audience, I don't want to speak for you, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking, wow, they're doing a really good job. That paint job looks awesome. And look, they even get the little tiny scratches. But there's an actual job for that.
Well, you're like transported into this world where you forget that it's like an animated world, I guess, so to speak.
Right.
Because, I mean, going back to earlier when we were saying, like, that Cars Land is so much, it looks so much like that actual Radiator Springs in the movie, and that so much so that you think you've been there.
Right.
Yeah, everything's like photorealistic, really, and also because of RIS, the rendering system, it improved the rendering time by 30 to 50%, which is a heck of a great deal, especially like when it comes to rendering. I remember Inside Out. Like took a full day just for a frame, and that's ridiculous. So if you cut that down by 30-50%, I mean, like you can produce movies faster, and you can get like 2 Pixar movies in a year instead of 1. You know? Like that is the difference.
Right.
And it helped render things, so it increased the speed and render it more faster in real time. They said it was more expensive. Of course, obviously, any upgrade is usually more expensive. They had to buy more hard drives to intake all that rendering. But
Marisa, you just bought a new laptop, and that was expensive, right? So if you're buying all those hard drives, can you imagine?
Exactly. They said they had to buy way more hardware.
Right.
But they got the process down by 30 to 50%. Right. So you have that balance.
Yeah, it's progression and it's technology, and Pixar really uses it perfectly. Here's the thing, as an audience member, and this is what makes our show so much fun, because when you research, you go, wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at it up on screen, you're not taking into account that they have a shader who does this and how much work goes into it. So what were you going to say?
Sorry. There's like 70 animators at its peak, but with over 200 models to deal with, like model designs to deal with.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people worked on this.
Yeah, I mean, and these aren't movies that are made within 1 year. They go through story development, animation, storyboarding, previs, I'm sure, voice talent finding and matching, and then modeling, like you said, because it seems Pixar seems to always work off of actual 3D models of the cars. So yeah, the Pixar movie is about 2 years, or if not longer, sometimes in the making. So Becca, you were going to say something.
I was gonna say, when I was like doing research last night, I thought it was I forget that like these people working on the movie aren't just like sitting behind computers all day doing stuff. They actually like go out into the real world to do research.
Sure,
And for the shot with like for the scene with all the mud, I found it interesting that they actually like went and played in the mud, so to speak.
To add to that, they sent 2 production designers to a real track, in a convertible Camaro, no less. They sent them in a convertible Camaro to this location. That's like all the way up from Daytona up through the Carolinas. So it was like real life research. So like they know what the terrain looked like, and they actually went to 2 racetracks that are no longer operable. One which was legendary at the beginning of stock car racing, and then I'm gonna butcher this, I'm sorry, Wilkesboro, which was very influential in the film. We actually have a picture, Cars Research, the actual location of where that was the influence for the town that McQueen goes to when he's looking for
do we have
Smokey.
that?
Yeah,
We have that
under
picture?
the research, Cars Research.
Okay.
It's the actual racetrack that's like dirt and
Is this
muddy
it?
outside. Yeah, that's.
Or is that
so
from
if
the
you're
movie? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're tuning into the iTunes version, definitely
Right.
tune into our YouTube. We have a picture here of like the concept art that they took from the actual racetrack.
Yeah.
And that translated to the town that McQueen goes to find Smokey.
Right. And in that racetrack too, you can just, like, even though it's an animated movie, you felt the nostalgia just from the way it looked and from the way it was talked about too. I do want to talk about the Demolition Derby, because we did meet some new characters there, right?
That bus.
I just thought of
bus.
Magic School Bus the
That
whole time.
bus.
How,
Miss
like,
Fritter.
Yeah,
that
no, I
was
just thought of
sort of
Magic School
kind of
Bus.
Hysterical.
am I wrong? But like, it was funny, but man, it was scary too. I mean,
That was pretty intense.
It was also like it was funny because usually school bus you kind of associate that with kids and it's a nice thing, not like really a scary. I mean, there are some
Like a
scary buses,
bull.
but like I liked how they portrayed it. They put horns on her, so you automatically feel like a bull is coming at you, and then also because she was yellow too, that was like literally the opposite of what Cruz could have been.
Right.
You know, like. Cruz is a small, sleek yellow car, and then, like, this is a big one that's so far from sleek that will literally trample you.
Trample you, yeah. And the way the whole scene was set up, because they think they're just going to do a stock car race, some kind of a the race, and Crazy Eights, he goes, I think we got to get out of here, and then it ends up just being essentially
locked in there.
it's a steel cage match.
It is.
Which is a demolition derby. But again, it's part of the Pixar genius too, is you had these characters that were very fearsome, but at the end of the day, they're like, they end up loving Lightning McQueen, and of course they fall in love with Cruz because she won the demolition derby. And I love how they had the scenes of going back to that bar, and they're all cheering them on.
Like,
It's a really good
I
scene.
loved it because like the bus was awesome. Also, I just kept thinking of Magic School Bus too, like you were saying. But like
Magic School
even
Bus
down to the
marathon.
name choice, you had Miss Fritter, which like is you can
Frizzle.
just make those parallelisms
Yeah.
between like Miss Rizzo and like. I see what you guys did, but I liked her. She was so scary, but also she was cool at the
intense.
end.
Yes.
Because she's rooting for Cruz. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And again, you turned what was a villain into really cool colleagues.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
they could have play in this Cars world. Like maybe they go on Route 66, right? I mean, and they go to Radiator Springs. I think that would be sort of kind of fun. I wanted to talk about the mud because mud and the rendering of the mud, like it took a ton of time.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Just getting
Getting
number
it
one,
right.
it's getting it right and how you make it look as if
Yeah.
it's just covering up a paint job on a car. Where it's not too dark, but they can't be too light. And how do you do it? And then the shadowing from the light and how to keep Lightning McQueen, like how you keep the mud looking
Like
realistic.
keep his features, even though you're coloring up his color. Literally.
Yeah.
And it was,
Impressive.
it took a lot of time to make sure that, it took just a lot of time to make sure that just the mud alone was going to drip well and look as real as possible. And I think they succeeded. I think that they succeeded. I think they made I think it's a great scene.
I love the different cars in that demolition derby.
Yes.
So, I mean, we got the
And the Toy
personality
Story
of the bus, but just even like the 2 seconds of every other car, you're like, oh yeah, they're completely different mentality from the racers in the NASCAR race.
My God.
It's like this is a mud race.
Yeah.
You're on the streets.
Crazy
now.
Eights, and there are no rules.
There are
I
no
just
rules.
love where Lightning's like, Crazy Eights? What? Oh, I think we got to get out of here. And then
Panic instant.
Everyone.
and Cruz is like, what are you talking about? He goes, we're dead. So, but but it also throws to the learning curve, because again,
You just go. You don't think you go.
you go,
That's
and
what Cruz
Smokey said, well, they both did. And he goes, well, you were in this demolition derby. He goes, I don't see a scratch on you. You did something right.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh. And again, it just goes back to the old school Rocky training
Yeah.
hey, yeah, throw him into a demolition match, So
There you go.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, become a wrestler.
Become a wrestler. So I also wanted to talk about, because we talked about the various jobs, right? So there's a director of photography lighting, okay? So and this is Kim White. And they had to cheat reflections in the Cars movies and acknowledging that all our new technology comes with a new set of challenges. Our characters are cars, and we want them to look really beautiful, which the reflections really help us accomplish. But their characters, and the audience needs to read their emotions and expressions, and there are some reflections that can be so distracting, we have to manage that. Yet another job.
Yeah.
So these are all things, folks, if you're good with computers and animation, these are all the little microcosms of things that
You don't think about.
you don't think about but are so necessary in bringing a movie like Cars 3, or I'm going to say most any other digital animation movie today, but particularly Pixar, which makes characters out of, let's call them inanimate objects, and gives them life. And I think that's the other thing about Cars, is that you gave these cars life and personality. I think they found the right people to voice them, but their expressions on their grills, their mouths, don't look cheesy, and you buy the voices fit the personality of the car, and Pixar does that great.
I agree. I agree.
Let's move on to something that also is very important in Pixar movies, and it's extremely important, I think, in the Cars movies, even Cars 2, the soundtrack to a Cars movie.
Yeah. Randy Newman.
So we have
Very
Randy
country.
Newman, right? But not only that, but this one they're actually, and you can find it on iTunes. There were 2 soundtracks to this movie. There's the Randy Newman,
great.
who is no stranger to the Pixar world.
Nope.
Right? He's written since Toy Story, I think.
Toy Story.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, You Got a Friend in Me. Wasn't that Randy Newman? Right?
Yeah.
Since the very beginning. And he's been with Pixar throughout its entire history. And he's back again.
Back again.
What did you think about his score?
I liked it. It definitely felt like Cars 1, especially in what made me remind of Cars 1 is like the scene where Sally and McQueen takes a stroll through like the forest and like all over the place, just, you know, going for a ride. A ride? What's that?
Right.
There were moments like that like when it's just soft and nothing really crazy is going on, but you definitely got that same feeling of like, this is why we love Cars.
Yeah, and why we love Route 66 and the nostalgia. I want to go to that. If I know the scene you're talking about, Marisa, and it is such an the music plays such an important part to that scene that, in fact, on the actual ride Radiator Spring Races, they use that same musical cue, which is pretty much the same time in that movie when they're like rounding a corner and the music comes up to this crescendo as Lightning McQueen sees a waterfall, that beautiful waterfall for the first time. And the ride does the same thing. You come around a corner, you don't see it, and the music just comes up in the thing and you're in front of this beautiful waterfall. Randy Newman's score, and I agree, in this was used very much like it was used in Cars. It definitely evokes emotion, and it plays as a wonderful bed to be a companion piece to the racing action, to the quiet moments. I think his score was really good in this movie.
Yeah, you always saw, like, I remember in this movie, like, the points that really stood out to me was when they're on the beach during the montage, but there was that one moment where he was just, like, Cruz finally gets it. Yeah. And you're like, finally, after literally a montage of her failing over and over again, like, she finally gets that one ride, and there's all you hear is score, which was cool. And then every time they're drifting, especially outdoors, not on the race, like on their NASCAR racetrack, but when they're actually out in the natural environment and they're drifting, that's when you always hear it.
Yeah, he had a 110-piece orchestra to help him record this score. Awesome. And he talks about this montage where Lightning goes through the woods in the dark. Very funny scene, by the way, is that they said, go by the shine of the moon. What? I don't get it. The moon shining, moonshine. It was like, wow, these guys were bootleggers. Like that's where stock car racing got its roots. Is from bootlegging. I'm not a NASCAR guy, but it was through bootlegging. Ultimately, it's his last training race before Florida, and instead of the music that emphasized the craziness of the scene, Newman was asked to write something straight that built to its definitive conclusion. And again, I think score has always played an amazing part in all of the Pixar movies, I believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And this one actually has, though, it has another score to it too. It has the source music. So as we have the montage of them going when they're driving to Florida, or when they're driving to, you had music.
No Life is a Highway.
Yeah. So Rascal Flatts, not
Flats.
the Little Rascals.
Rascal Flatts.
Not the
And again, I think the Cars movies have used source music very well too, and they used it great. It's a great scene, that montage of them traveling through the country again. Sort of harkens back to Cars. Did you enjoy the music this time around as well?
I enjoy the music, and also I went to D23 a couple of years ago when they were talking about like the upcoming Disney movies, and Cars 3 was one of them. And I actually saw Randy Newman. He came out on stage and performed.
No.
Freaking Randy Newman is on the stage right now. Like a Pixar legend is right in front of me. It was pretty neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did he perform for Cars? Like, did he do a song from Cars? Like, was it orchestra or just him singing?
It was him and a piano.
Well, him and a piano.
Yeah. No, that's special.
He didn't happen to do Short People, did he?
No.
Darn. Okay.
I just remember, like, it was a while ago now, because that was August 2015. So we're coming up on 2 years already. But I remember he was actually on stage performing.
Right.
I just remember thinking, he's right in front of me. This is awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. So, Mike Rich, here's a gentleman. He was actually the rookie in the group, and he gets this call from Pixar. He's a writer, and I think part of the reason they were expressing an interest in me, and I was thrilled for the prospect of working with him, is that I've worked on several films which had sports as a theme or a backdrop. Also, my very first film, Finding Forrester, had a bit of a mentoring aspect to it. And while they were very early on the development and brainstorming, those two themes was what interested in pursuing. So I think that's why he ended up getting this call. Something interesting too, when we talk about sports, right? I want to bring it into the real world.
Oh, totally.
Ironically, it comes at a time when there's a lot of iconic athletes within our time period, within the past 5 years. Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant, Jeff Gordon, NASCAR racer. Also, even David Ortiz as a Red Sox fan.
Tim Duncan.
Like, it does mirror
What's
Ray
happening in
Allen.
their life?
right.
Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett. Oh,
That's
so
a good
many.
point.
Paul
Yeah,
Pierce.
but it
The big three.
it mirrors our current society
New
of
people coming
sports where, like, they've played their game to the best of their capability. What are they going to go on to, like, next? Many of them will become broadcasters
Tony
like
Romo.
Chick or, something like that. So I appreciate that they actually took that into consideration in planning and mapping out.
good point.
I like that because it is so true to life. We are in a generation where legends are now retiring, or like then will become part of the Hall of Fames in whatever sport.
Yeah.
And also because just coincidentally putting a timestamp on this particular show, like yesterday was the NBA draft, so I'm literally watching the new generation getting involved into the NBA. You see all these youngsters coming up, and you see all these legends retiring, and but every time you see a highlight reel from someone, they're always referring someone who was back in the 80s or like just a couple years ago, like this player reminds me of this player, you know. So like you can definitely tell the new generation coming in will still have like the same type of characteristics of people that we grew up watching and loving, you know?
Right. Yeah. So it definitely mirrors our sense of what's happening in the real world, and I think too that's what Pixar always taps in on. Whether it's an Inside Out or whether it's Up, right? It taps into relationships, about growing old together, about new relations. Even a movie like WALL-E, right? It taps into that relationship. Oh, I'm sort of odd here. Oh, but Evie, it's a beautiful love story. They're able to tap into a humanistic trait and tropes that makes it very relatable, no matter if it's a robot or if it's a stuck car. So I really like that a lot. We actually have, although he's not here physically, actually have some cool conversation, or it's John Lasseter talking about cars. About the genesis of cars, which I didn't know. So I was able to bring this in. So if we can watch some of this, because I do find it fascinating to hear John Lasseter talk, because he's such an amazing storyteller. So why don't we start that up, and we'll find out what the genesis of Cars is and what inspired him.
Cars is very personal to me. I love this whole set of characters, this world, a world where the cars are the living characters. There's no humans in it. I love this. It's very personal for me. I grew up in Whittier, California. My dad was a parts manager at a Chevrolet dealership. I grew up in the parts department. And my mom was an art teacher, and I loved to draw because of her. And so I always look at cars as kind of putting the two sides of my personal family together. And I love these characters. I love the world. I love kind of thinking about what would the world look like from a car's point of view. So to tell another story in this world is easy for me. It's not easy to do, but it's an easy decision to make because I love it.
Can we pause that for a second?
Cars 3.
Let's pause that for a sec. Thanks. Isn't that great? I mean,
it makes sense too. I was like, he always John Lasseter always wearing his famous Disney cars that are
Yeah, I like the
perfect.
shirt.
Well,
custom to him.
he wears his he wears his Hawaiian
famous-
shirts. I want that. I don't know
Yeah,
why they don't sell that at Disney. I'd buy that shirt. That's
They
awesome.
actually have a John Lasseter shirt line. I like that because it shows like he's had this idea from it, like him as a kid. You know, this is something
Yeah.
that has always been with him, so he has that natural passion for it.
Yeah, and he's always said too about the original cars that it was personal for him because of car trips they took, and this whole Route 66, thing. And it is a wonderful homage to America. And I'm not saying that as like being patriotic I'm not trying to be political here. I'm just trying to say that it shows a part of Americana that while Route 66 is still there, it's still a famous, popular route, there isn't what made the wonder of it all. And it was that real neon and little towns and the hotels and all the various things that you can do. And you can see that oozes in cars, in spades, and even like Lightning McQueen has to repave this road,
Yeah.
right? And they're trying to get people to come back, and they believe that people might come back to Route 66 to Radiator Springs with its real neon and such. It's one of the things, and he just does it so well.
But also,
this movie.
the explanation of Route 66 of why it isn't what it is also in the first one was because they got bypassed by an interstate.
Right.
Something
Progression.
new.
Yep.
Yeah, like that progression of what the country is. It is a sad realization that, like, we're forgetting all the good things in life because we just want to get somewhere faster.
Right.
And I think that was a good theme in the first one, and I feel like they went back to that in this one because
Exactly.
everyone, because of technology and the progression of technology and everything's just getting better and faster. You think
There's
that's
less patience in the world.
yeah, it's more so you have to go back to your basic training just to be you can be fast, but does that make you a good racer?
Right.
Does that give you the instincts of how to actually perform well?
Right.
So
There was-
they went back to that.
Well, there was this funny, again, I'm going to throw back to Rocky. I know, Marisa,
Yes,
you're going
love
to
it.
remember this because
I
there's a
love
scene where
Rocky.
Smokey is saying, look, you need speed. You ain't got it.
Yeah.
You ain't that speed anymore. You've got other things. And there was that theme
Gotta be
in
smarter.
Rocky Balboa where he's going to go and he's like, you ain't got it. He's like, you've got blunt force trauma. You've got to fight a different way, just like McQueen has to race a different way. And it's the appreciation for the past and training. And that theme does carry over, I think, quite well. Becca, you were going to say?
I think one of the cool things, going back to the appreciating America type thing, is that it takes you on a road trip kind of at the same time as you get attached to these cars.
Absolutely. I know, I agree.
Backing into Marisa over here.
It builds the relationships, I think.
Yeah.
That I am so glad are still intact in this movie. I'm glad we had more of these characters in this movie. So
I wish we could have seen more Sally because I love
Yeah.
Me too.
That was
Like
when
Sally
you play
was
it.
in all three movies. I'm like, I love Bonnie Hunt, and it was just. I'm glad we got Cruz, and like she was a
Yeah.
cool character. I feel like we didn't really talk about her a lot. Which
well, no,
we're
I want to talk
But
about Cruz
we'll
because I
get to
think
her.
she's the
But,
future.
we
Of
saw
course.
that a small bit of Sally, and I was like, oh, I wish she could have been that female voice, always like encouraging McQueen during that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
he was too busy spending the whole movie encouraging someone else.
Yeah, that's
That's
Cruz. If we
Cruz.
have Sally, who's
We
the
don't.
blue, we don't. Okay, so
But Bonnie
my
Hunt's great.
thing on Sally was this, and the way Bonnie Hunt gives her life. The scene where Lightning is in the barn, secluded, and he's in his primer. And she comes in and she's like, yeah, love what you're doing with the place. You're really rocking that primer. She goes, oh, and that odor. Oh, she, like, her sarcasm was so funny.
Yes, it
and
was
what was
on point.
beautiful
So
about the
Bonnie.
scene, Mater comes in, hello, hey, did you use your lawyerly thing to change his attitude? It's such, and again, it's the relationships that I think was sort of kind of forgotten in Cars 2 that comes back in Cars 3, and the mere fact that she calls him Stickers. Hey, Stickers! Like,
Yes.
I loved that. You're right. I could have used more of Sally as well, but the mere fact that she got to say "I love you" saves. Really
like,
saves it for me.
That's fabulous.
So what do you have to say? Because I do want to talk about Cruz Ramirez.
Yeah, go ahead.
She earns.
On the Sally thing, I was just kind of like, wait, when are we gonna see Sally? When are we gonna see Sally? As the movie kept progressing,
We started in the beginning of the movie. And
when
that
are
was
we gonna
it.
get back to her?
Yeah, and she comes back sort of
In
kind
the
of at the
race.
end. But yeah, I mean, she's integral to at least changing McQueen's mindset and getting and encouraging him to go back out on the circuit. So, but our new person that we have to talk about is voiced by Cristela Alonso, is Cruz
really
Ramirez. Okay. This is our new female, and you said it earlier, Marisa, about bringing in a female character into the Cars world outside of Sally, who's actually going to race and compete, is a lot, because it opens it up to some more audience. It gives women, it gives girls, boys.
Little girl.
You know, boys liked her too. Everybody was cheering when she won the race, okay?
Yeah.
I think that Cruz is a perfect setup, and she is the catalyst. Like, this is a character that was so well written, I believe. And the fact that it was a woman makes it even more so important.
It's on the right
Marisa.
side of history. I really liked her because like she had a great personality.
Yes.
She kind of reminded me of like a nicer version of Jillian Michaels. You know, like that trainer, but like it's like that'll just motivate you and make you want to like work out. Like, yeah, I'm doing something productive. I like that. Like, she was a likable character from the start, and you're always rooting for her. And then when you see her with her actual abilities, like, yeah, this girl's good. Shoot, she should be racing. And I liked it. But, like, also learning the research after the fact, learning that Cruz was originally actually a male. And they changed the storyline. And I'm glad that they updated it and changed the like, Cruz eventually became female. Because the director, he said that he early on in the movie, or like in the writing conception stages, he's a father himself, and he was looking, pretty much observing his daughter,
Right.
and his own personal daughter, and realized like how much self-doubt that the girls have more than the guys do.
Right.
And he took that self-doubt within women. He's like, how about I apply this to this character of Cruz?
Right.
And we saw that in this movie. Like, she's always self-doubting, and she had that moment of that could have been her chance, but because of her self-doubt, she stopped herself, and cut herself short. And I like that because that happens. Girls who are watching this movie, like kids and teenagers, because it is a horrible time to grow up in. Like, a teenage age span is the worst.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And like, they can relate to that self-doubt and people putting them down, and I think that's what makes this character relatable.
I
so
agree.
you're rooting for her because she's just very humanistic.
Yeah.
She's had those.
And the beach scene is particularly funny, especially Krabbies. I didn't want to run them over. They're in bed now. Like, and again, if watching the movie in the way that it goes forward, this is a clue. This is a cue, because Lightning McQueen is basically telling her how to get her tires dirty, and you got to race on this stuff. This is great. And by the end of that montage, I like when she dug herself in the sand. She ends up in the water. Like, this is all like fun stuff. And he's like telling her, well, you can't start off strong. You got to build up to the speed and go. And it's a really great scene. But I think the one scene, and I want to know if you agree with me here, the one scene that she is a solidified character in this universe is the scene where she sort of kind of bitches McQueen out.
Yeah.
Where she said they're in Mac, and as voiced by the wonderful John Ratzenberger.
I mean, we gotta love him.
And she wins this trophy, and albeit it may not be the prettiest trophy in the world,
Which he makes fun of.
which he made fun of, right? But it's her trophy, but the mere fact that this new character, it's a very emotional scene. And when he breaks the trophy, albeit it accidentally, but it breaks the trophy, in a sense, it almost breaks her. And as an audience, you go, oh, Lightning. Oh, no bueno.
Yeah, it's like,
right?
you're not a
like,
good
Lightning,
guy
wait,
right now.
no.
Right. So what did you
villain.
think about that scene?
But it's relatable too, because that, you know, like just watching it, because we already heard that other people, you know, from the guys, no less. I'm usually the first one to call the guys out. From the guys, like we saw it in the beginning of the movie. It's like, oh, she's just a trainer, blah blah blah. She's nothing.
Yeah.
And we saw people bring her down and like already kind of like lessen her character. And then when we saw it from McQueen, who is arguably our protagonist of the film, when we see the protagonist also bring her down, you're like, shoot, we know what she's going through because everyone has done this to her.
Right.
And you feel for her too, because she has the same humanistic characteristics. And you're like, crap, this is just another person telling her she can't do it.
Yeah.
That's why she's has that self-doubt.
And you know what was interesting about it too is they made her well, what I respected about the character and its writing was that they gave that character knowledge and respect for the game, for the race, because she knew her history, right?
Yeah.
There are many
been
people coming up who don't have that appreciation for the history of certain things, and she earned, and through Lightning McQueen's self-realization, but she earns her place as a racer, and that's what Lightning McQueen realizes, because she has a passion for the race as well, and she wanted to be a racer. And so when it comes to the end, you're like, good play, McQueen. That was really smart. And when she gets in, she's able to use all this training that McQueen was doing too, right? That he's like, no,
To her
go through the
advantage.
windows. I get it. And you're right. In that scene, she was winning everything.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciated that she wasn't just, oh, I deserve to be here. I want to be here. She earns the win. And when she earns the win, that makes you cheer. You go, yay, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think that she's an important part. If they decide to go and make another Cars movie, she's integral now. And it's like, okay, what are the stages next for Cruz? What's next for Cruz, Ramirez, and Lightning McQueen and Radiator Springs?
There's so much depth to her character that I don't see like how they couldn't go on and make a Cars 4 that's like centered around
A
her
female.
and Lightning. Yeah.
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 No, I would love it if Cars 4 actually had a female at the helm.
Yes.
It's like, granted, she was a big character in this movie, but to have the main center storyline focus on a woman, that's not bad.
That'd be so fun.
I
And
agree.
That would bring the girls to the theaters to watch more Cars.
Yeah.
I mean, and like Cars, you always kind of associate that with men. You don't really associate that with women.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie. So like I think it opens up a whole nother opportunity, another generation, and another demographic to enjoy these films.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And no, I wouldn't mind it at all. That's why I'm very curious as to what could Pixar be thinking about. Okay, we're going to make one more Cars movie. And how do we make this fitting? Like, what would be the next stage?
Yeah.
Do we go as far as saying that Cruz Ramirez has had to struggle through, sexism in the race or whatever, and how how do we do this? I'm just very fascinated, and
Well,
I
we got a
hope
line
that it
about
happens.
sexism.
Right.
We had most of the because when they were doing the actual swap during the race, they're like, she's a girl. It's like, doesn't matter who,
Sterling.
if it's a girl or a guy, it matters is she's a racer.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember the exact
It-
line.
well, it
but,
was.
they
It doesn't
question-
matter what the car is. The only thing that matters, it's got to come out with the 95.
Yeah,
It's
it
gotta
comes
have
out
the number.
Yeah.
with the number. But like, it does. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like they questioned it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm glad that they had that self-awareness, because everyone's gonna question the females.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
just how it is.
I enjoyed too how Lightning McQueen encouraged her, because she was starting to fade in the race. Like when Army Hammer's car. I forget his name right now. It's
Was being a bully.
Well, yeah, he sort of kind of fell back and like got into her head, and he's like, but Lightning McQueen was smart enough to go, you see what he just did there, right?
Yeah.
He goes, he got into my head. He goes, no, you got into his head.
Jackson Storm.
He goes, you got into Storm's head and made him. He's afraid of you. You got to use. He goes, use that anger, use that as motivation, and it was such a great scene too because it's like, well, yeah, how many laps is she behind me? No, she's right behind you. It was a great
Literally,
scene.
and like that reveal, I love it.
Yeah, it was a great scene, but I liked how there was confidence when you think about it. There were confidence in two characters. We had confidence in Cruz, in being in the race, and then we have confidence in Lightning McQueen's character from becoming racer to mentor to the pit boss there, to the crew chief who's actually calling the race, and he has confidence in himself because of his racer, and he has confidence in her. It's really a great passing of the baton. It really is. I do want. We should probably talk a little bit about reception
Box office.
of this movie, box office. So we can talk like production budget on this movie. Marisa, you said you had found
It was estimated 175 million. So throw in P&A, so probably around over 200.
It's well over 200 for a Pixar movie, and it all looked on screen. I do have to say this. Speaking of the look of this movie, I saw it twice. The first time I saw it in just plain old like XD, like large premium large format. The second time I saw it, I did see this in large format 3D. And if you haven't seen this, and again,
it comes like right at you.
but it looked so clean and amazing. Did you guys see it in 3D at all?
I saw it in
No,
3D.
I saw it in regular.
It looked amazing in 3D.
It did.
There was nothing distracting about it.
I forgot I was watching 3D.
And it really brought the world, the racetracks, the racing to life. The car crash scene. I did want to ask this too, regarding the car crash. In the trailer, that was the very first teaser trailer. Was this right? And it's in slow mo. Lightning McQueen spiraling and the sparks. He was breathing in the trailer, like you could hear, like.
It's even more intense.
But I didn't hear that in the theatrical. Did I miss something, or
No,
am I
I
just
think
crazy?
well also that was a teaser because
so they wanted the intensity.
Because and I think the first Cars did so well of explaining how serious crashes can be into a racer's career. And then when you saw that in just the teaser of this movie, you're like, oh crap, this is the end of McQueen's career.
How are we gonna go?
And I think they purposely added that like time stopping because his career is stopping. His career is over.
Yeah.
I think it was a good use of just that heavy breathing. You're like, what the heck's happening?
I know. It's a very intense trial. Speaking of intensity, I do want to ask this too, because I know we're talking reception and everything. This movie was rated G. Rated G.
So anyone can go see this one.
Right. What are your... Marisa, we talked about this a lot during Jungle Book, about it being PG as opposed to PG-13. I'm not saying that Cars 3 needed to be PG-13.
Right.
Did you find it as an adult, like, because the car crash, that was an intense car crash.
The
demolition derby. Like, if you're a 4-year-old kid seeing that bus, am I wrong, or am I just being an old curmudgeon here? What are your thoughts?
I thought it was PG. Like I figured like all the other cars, I think they're probably PG. I didn't realize it was J until afterwards.
Yeah, I know.
But it didn't bother me. But yeah, especially the demolition. Like I can imagine kids having nightmares that a big bus is chasing them down.
Yeah, I was
That'd
just
be
like
a scary nightmare.
because I was just like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if the Disney pays the MPAA, but you gotta be fair across the board, because sometimes the movies that you give like a PG-13 rating that could be PG, or movies that you give a PG rating to, that should definitely be at the very least PG-13.
Well, Jungle Book, that was rated PG.
PG.
But literally, it was explained because there is scary thematical elements.
But they were very scary.
Very scary.
That
Yeah.
should
They
have
had the
been
most
PG-13.
intense scenes in Jungle
I
Book.
just wanna know-
It gave me anxiety.
I want to know what they're doing with the MPAA, how they treat Disney. Because, again, I'm not saying that it's the most intense movie in the world, right?
Yeah, but those
there were
scenes
two
are-
scenes that was... if you're taking a 4-year-old child to, they could be traumatized a little.
Yeah.
What do I know?
No, there was like a 4-year-old.
Becca, were you traumatized?
Were you
I was not traumatized, but there was like the demolition scene was a little like, whoa, okay, this is intense. But there was like a little like 3 or 4-year-old boy in front of me in the theater during the car crash scene that started hysterically crying.
Oh, really?
It could be scary. I mean, I can see how it could be scary.
So we'll talk. Let's talk some box office here. It opened up on over 4,000 locations, 4,256. It
big.
came in at number 1.
Of course.
Okay, and it came in at 53 point, let's say $7 million. It was 53,688. So I'm going to round up 53.7, which is an interesting gross. I was doing a little bit of research, and I'll try to bring it up too as I'm talking. But I personally, I was like going. It was the first time the tracking was sort of right this summer, because I thought this movie was going to do more. When I look at Pixar historically, anyways, I mean, within the past 5 years, the only movie that has done less business in its opening weekend, if I am correct, is The Good Dinosaur, which opened up, I want to say 43 million. I thought this movie was going to start at 70, but 53, which isn't bad. It was number 1. Thus far, it's done 70 domestically, which again, not too shabby for, what were your thoughts? I literally, I thought this was going to open up higher, bigger.
Yeah, that seems, especially with the rating, seems low to me.
Well, I mean, it's actually a very respectable number because opening up at 50 is pretty good. But it still has a long way to go from, Cars 1. And Cars 2 actually did well in numbers, even though that wasn't as strong of a movie. But you're also coming off of the heels of Wonder Woman. And
Right.
there's really no other kid programming out right now.
No, there
that
isn't.
This movie can compete to, so it is counter-programming to the other
that's why
previous movies.
Yeah.
But I think the numbers are respectable. It's not doing terribly.
No, no, not at all. But just to give you an idea too, Cars 2, which came out June 24th of 2011, which is about
6 years ago.
six years ago, opened up at 66 million. And it opened up on about 100 locations less. No big deal. But it opened up at 66. I would have expected,
It's open.
especially just a little bit more because, well, number one, I think they did a really good job marketing this movie. Okay,
Yeah.
they
Teaser trailer.
Promotion for it. We can get into promotion too.
yeah, I want to. I want to talk about promotion because I think in this movie it really said this is not going to be Cars 2.
Well,
Yeah.
also,
They set that precedent right off the bat.
And I think that's
agree.
what this movie might be, what's hindering the movie as well too, because Cars 2 was just not a good
reputation.
film. And it's already been 6 years. Cars is already out of people's minds. It's been a while since we've seen the Cars franchise come about. And kids now who loved Cars 1 is now an adult.
Right.
They're probably not going to go watch this unless they have kids of their own. I can't imagine a lot of 20, 30-year-olds going to see this movie on their own. I saw it because
I
we're
did.
doing this movie.
Well, I would have seen it. Okay, if I
would've
wasn't
seen
part
it.
of this podcast, you would have seen it.
I would
right?
have seen it.
Yeah, I
love
would have
Disney.
seen it too.
But the kids, the generation is this is already 11, 12 years old
Right.
now that the first generation is just older.
Yeah.
Now
true.
we have to have the older generation bring the kids.
Yeah, so you think Cars 2 was a hindrance?
Yeah.
You think it might have
Absolutely.
just stuck in people's head and said,
Yeah, and they're
don't know.
and now we're in the franchise. Everything's a sequel, and I think this is just another movie that's technically a sequel, and people are tired of sequels.
Yeah, I mean, there is, there is, what's the word, franchise fatigue, sequelitis, but again, when I was looking at just looking at various other Pixar grosses, The Good Dinosaur opened up at 39 million, 39.1. Cars 2 was 66.
That's more than a half.
Right. I mean, Finding Dory is a different animal altogether. That opened up at 135.
Yeah, Finding Dory was great.
Right. So, but Inside Out opened up at 90. Even Brave opened up at 66, right? Strong female character there. Monsters, Inc. was 62. So, again, I was
but
just
if you
looking
think
at
about
some
it, like
history.
those movies, they're originals.
Sure.
Like Finding Dory,
I get it.
that was a sequel. But everyone loves Ellen.
No, you're
but
right.
that's the thing, because like Owen Wilson, he's done movies here and there, but like Ellen is a star in and of herself.
Sure,
she has
absolutely.
the following that helped bring
argument.
Finding Dory. She premiered the trailer on her show, so like
Right.
there was already a set following to make Finding Dory great and successful in numbers, just like we proved here. I don't think Cars had that.
Yeah.
Like Cars, you bring in Cristela Alonso.
Right.
I'm sorry, she was great. People don't really know her.
Right.
People know Armie Hammer, but they're not going to go see this movie for Armie Hammer.
So you're saying that if Owen Wilson potentially had his own successful talk show where he could have debuted the trailer,
I'm saying he doesn't have
He
the
make a talk
No,
show.
I know what you're
he
saying.
doesn't have the star quality that
Yeah.
Ellen does to
No.
bring in audience members and get
That's
butts
true.
in the seats.
No, I don't disagree. It was just interesting in the history of other Pixar movies, and this is why I think historically the numbers didn't work out the way I thought they would historically, because usually there's a pattern, but this one opened up. For me personally, it opened up a little bit on the lower end of expectation, considering Disney really did throw a lot of tender loving care in promoting this movie. They did a really good job of introducing us to new characters, and we're gonna sort of kind of go back to the first Cars. So I don't know. I just thought that I thought it might have come out a little bit more, and not that it's a bad thing. They've done close to worldwide. They've done 91 million, so it'll be at 100 domestically pretty soon. We've got a 4th of July weekend. I don't think there's another quote unquote kids
movie coming out.
animated movie.
Yeah, no.
And I think that the word of mouth on this movie, cinema score, it's at an A.
It's done pretty. Yeah, so like high ratings compared to what Cars 2 is.
Yeah,
That's good.
and let me ask you this. It's Rotten Tomatoes, and again, this sort of kind of shocked me too, is at a 66%. I believe, according to Rotten Tomatoes, that still falls under a fresh category. I would have expected it to be. I liked it a
Higher.
lot more than 66%.
Yeah, maybe like in the 80s, sure.
Maybe they based their judgment
Sure.
off of Cars 2 a little bit, because I
Well,
don't know. I don't
if
trust
you're
Rotten Tomatoes
only
normally.
but if you're basing only off of Cars 2, then that rating should have been a hell of a lot higher, because this movie is a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
So
is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I thought reviews were going to come in a little bit stronger. Again, the audience I saw it with, the kids, A, most importantly, not bored, and B, they were cheering when Cruz won the race.
Yeah.
And to me, that says the movie wins.
Success.
I mean, kids are loving this, and they're loving
And
Cruz Ramirez.
The adults were clapping in my theater too, so.
Yeah, like I heard a bunch of adults laughing and cheering as well. I think it was like emotionally, I don't think it got to the depths of what other Pixar movies can get to. Inside Out, I bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
Finding Dory, there's moments where like you feel.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
Disney does a great job of having at least like that one moment where it's just like heart wrenching.
I agree with
I
you.
didn't really feel that in this movie, so I think
Yeah,
maybe people are just like it's just a feel good movie, which is fine.
Sure, no, and I do agree with you.
But
Even
I don't think that
comparing
makes
it-
this movie as memorable as the other films because there isn't that one moment you're like, you get it.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about many moments here, and I said too in the top of my review that no, it's not as good as the original Cars. However, it's wise enough that they went back to try to capture, or not to even capture or recapture. You got to go back to putting themes into your movies, because I think Cars 2 is a lesson for Disney, a lesson for Pixar.
Listen,
Just-
put Larry the Cable
stories.
Guy as not your lead.
Well, and but what made
Life lesson.
up to that point, what makes Pixar movies special and what makes Disney animated movies special is the heart that's involved. in
Yeah.
it. There's and you can throw in theme as well, but there's a lot of heart
Yeah.
that makes you love the characters, and that's what makes you love with Radiator Springs, and you love those characters regardless of being cars.
And everyone loves cars. Everyone, a lot of people like NASCAR. Kids, when they're toddlers, to, growing up, car toys, just not just of the Cars franchise, but just like kids generally have a natural fascination for cars.
Yeah.
And I think that's what appeals to kids and why this franchise is successful, because kids love cars.
I mean, I was gonna say Mater has heart, but in like that kind of way that like he has heart without meaning to have heart type thing, and
Well,
it's
I
a
think
little
there's
corny. It's like
meaning.
corny.
He's lovable.
It's corny.
Mater has
Which
love
is
for everybody,
why
and he sees
I
in
feel like he's
Lightning
not-
McQueen. In a sense, too, if you watch Cars, Mater is almost as much a mentor. Like when he takes Lightning McQueen out tractor tipping, cow tipping, like
Which is so true when you're in a prairie podunk area.
But it's funny. He teaches Lightning to have fun.
Yeah.
Where Doc teaches him to have fun while racing. Like you gotta love racing, man.
gotta
Like
have
this is what
balance.
you do.
Two sides.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
balance in life.
Yeah.
Because in Cars 1, McQueen was all about racing. How do I win the next race? I have to get to the race. Everything was just
Train.
racing.
Yep.
And like this one was more like getting back to why you love racing.
Wasn't that a great line at the very, very beginning where it sort of kind of opens up like the original Cars and you hear him going, I am speed. I'm speed. I eat them for breakfast. Wait, did I really say that? And Mater's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you did. And he's like, Mater, what are you doing here? So, again, that's what Mater is. He's his best bud. And it has nothing to do with Larry the Cable Guy at all. It was just in Cars 2, a little Mater can go a long way. There have been Mater
Yes.
shorts that have been funny.
And
such.
the end scene, like after the credits, post credits,
Uh-huh.
it was
Oh,
Mater.
it's Mater. Yeah.
It's Mater.
Yeah.
Just sitting
I
there
was like,
singing.
this is perfect.
One thing before we start to wrap up, there is one thing that I do have to talk about too. Lou. The short that preceded.
Oh, I loved Lou.
How do you Lou
Yeah,
was
that was
again.
so cute.
Lou,
I love Lou.
The opening animated short again. You got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, if that, of just pure heart and a lost and found.
And relatability as well.
Yeah.
Because you always had that bully on the playground that's mean to the other kids who don't deserve it. And then like I love how it was Lou, this character, made out of all the items. Like, no, you have to be a good person. Return these items, and then you'll get what you want.
And it was,
actually.
And the
was
kids
so,
loved it.
It was a
too.
great
did.
lesson just in 5 minutes.
yeah, and it was so beautifully animated. And they give character to Lost and Found clothes and baubles and
Yeah.
toys and this and
Baseball.
it was a perfect way to get into Cars 3. Like you're already in the mood. Like Lou is very, very well done. So a great animated short.
I loved Lou.
That's a wonderful companion piece to Cars 3. So why just think that? I think we've talked everything from production, we've talked music, we've talked to look.
Just talk really quickly about the
please.
promotion.
Yeah.
They did a great job. We talked about the teaser, getting
Sure.
everyone hyped. But actually, there was a Road to the Races tour where they had life-size characters of Lightning McQueen, Cruz, Ramirez, and Jackson Storm actually rolling into 27 cities across the country. So they went to like Miami, Dallas, Chicago, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Denver, and Los Angeles. It ended up they went to the NASCAR Sonoma raceway.
Oh, wow.
And these are life-size actual cars.
Yeah, no, they must be this. And they're the ones that have the eyes. Because they
Yeah.
must be the ones that are in Cars Land.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
similar to that, right?
Exactly, and the life-size characters. The tour ended up. We also have a picture of it in the Cars
Yeah, let's
promo.
bring that up.
The tour ended at the red carpet at Cars 3 in Anaheim on June 10th which was the premiere date
Is this it
for
right here?
2017. So yeah, we have a picture of their life-size Cruz and
Cruz, Storm, Lightning.
Lightning Jackson Storm.
I was just recently. I have to tell this story. So, I had some good friends from Boston that I came up with. They ran theaters and such. So Sean and Lisa going. They were in town. We went to Disney. We went to Disneyland. And we went to California Adventure, and we're in Cars Land. And they're huge movie fans, like we all are, right?
Yeah.
So they know movies. And they were in Cars Land, and literally, it's so fun to go with people who love movies and Pixar. They were just like kids. And then all of a sudden, where I was like, dude, look, there's Cruz Ramirez. And I looked, and Cruz Ramirez was pulling out of the Crazy Cones, like literally driving out. And they stopped in their tracks. Every show was like, Cars Land that actually has the Cars characters driving around and talking. Oh my God!
Like it might end a
Disney
movie.
magic, yeah. And that's what they do. That's so great. Now I haven't seen Storm yet, so I'm assuming that there's a Storm.
That's pretty.
But if you are ever in California, and again, I get no money
go
for
to
this,
Cars Land.
and you're a Cars fan, you have to go to Cars Land. You can bump into Mater, and you have to do the Radiator Spring Racers ride because. Well, Radiator Springs just comes to life. But it is funny to see how kids relate. So, to see
they
this.
love it. Kids love cars.
I love it.
And also, so that was pretty cool. I would have loved to have seen that in real life, the actual real life size cars. And Auto Trader, because we know that's like big,
Right.
cars, parts, franchise or like all over the world store. They actually had like personalized search functionality like on their website and stuff. And their 30-second auto commercial television spots actually featured the characters of cars. Speaking pretty clearly, showcasing their personalities, and Waze, which people who don't know, Waze, the navigation app that everyone uses, especially here in LA. They actually there's a system that they changed to the functionality on the app where they like the voices could actually be Lightning McQueen or Jackson Storm could be talking to you and giving you directions. And
That's
they're
awesome.
actually the real actors' voices
would
giving
totally
you
do that.
directions. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I also know
Yeah.
from a collector standpoint, and for kids for older kids who love to play with their toys still, the company called Sphero, you may recognize them because they made the BB-8.
Yeah,
that
Sphero.
the little BB-8. Well, they made a Lightning McQueen too. I have to say, it's expensive, but his mouth moves, he talks. It's Owen Wilson. His eyes move, and he drives like Lightning McQueen. It's pretty awesome. So for those of you who like your high-tech toys, and you love cars, there's a really cool Sphero thing. So I think they've done everything right. I believe that Cars 3 is going to continue the legacy on.
I think they did great in the promotion, especially for
I agree.
Auto Trader and Waze. That's geared specifically towards the adults.
I
Kids aren't
agree.
using
Yeah, I
Waze.
was gonna say
Yeah.
the Waze
Like
thing is
Waze is for
clever.
people who actually drive, and you have to be an adult for that.
Yeah.
So like
I
think the
agree.
promotion was great.
I-
Disney's
yeah.
usually good with that.
They usually are. They didn't no stone unturned in the promotion of Cars 3.
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up, we always do final thoughts. Marissa?
I really enjoyed this film. I'm glad this kind of got Cars 3 back on the map, like in a good way, and it kind of not really takes away like the bad taste that Cars 2 did, but it helps it, and it reminds you why we liked Cars so much. I love the progression of the characters and giving it a female storyline. I think it's great. Definitely check out a rundown. We have so much details, including the Easter eggs that, of course, Disney has in all of their movies.
Yeah,
So I
Becca,
enjoyed this.
you tweeted out at least one of them.
Yeah, the Pizza Planet.
Yeah, where's the Pizza Planet truck?
It's in the demolition scene, I believe. And
How many Easter
Yes,
eggs were there?
Yeah.
Pizza Planet. Oh, there's a lot.
There's a ton.
The Pizza Planet truck is on one of the competitors' demolition on the side.
Okay.
After getting smashed, the iconic rocket on top of the
Right.
truck flies
Yeah.
off into the audience. Yeah, and you saw A113, which is, the famous office
Right.
number of Disney Studio Animations. That was
Yeah.
on Sterling's office. And that was also on the commentator Shannon Spokes. That was her press sticker number.
Right, 113.
I also liked the that's the Coco Town thing, because I saw the preview for Coco before, and I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
wait, that's the same town. Clever, good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Luxo Junior Ball, which is in like every Disney
Right.
movie.
Oh, yeah.
It appears as an illustration on one of the trucks in the Demolition Derby.
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon, of course, reprises his role.
Right.
We had the Lightyear tires, which Buzz
Right.
Lightyear. Yeah. Oh, well, one of Lightning McQueen's rivals on the track is the light blue colored number 31.
Right.
The car named Terry Cargus, which is sponsored by Triple
Dent.
Dent, which is the gum in Inside Out.
I saw that one too.
That's
The jingle. There's a lot
They
more.
do a ton of that stuff,
Easter
and that's
eggs. Go
that's
check
what
out
makes.
Rundown.
I think part of what makes then it's the charm of Pixar movies. So
Oh yeah, I totally saw A113. I was like, there it is.
113. Uh-huh.
There it is. I see it.
Yep. So Becca, what were your final thoughts?
My final
On Cars
thoughts
3.
are I like how they made Cars 3 so relevant to the present day and age. That's how when I was going to see it, Marisa's like, you're gonna love it because of the story.
Sure.
And how relevant it is to right now. So yeah, I like that was a strong female character in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, listen, I really think Cars 3, again, I'll say, it goes back on track. And I do really believe that Cars 2 was a lesson to Pixar as a whole. Not just that it affects Cars 3, but I think it affected the movies after. The movie has heart. It has fun, great characters to watch. Cruz, Ramirez, and Lightning McQueen together. I look forward. I hope there's at least one more movie with those two and our good friends at Radiator Springs. It's good to be back. I myself will be at Radiator Springs sometime within the next week or so for sure.
Take me with you.
Because absolutely, anybody
with
can
you.
come along. Tell me, yeah,
go with
because it's great, and you really do the detail that they put into it. You'd feel like you're in the movie.
Yes.
And thank you to you fine folk for tuning in and watching this breakdown and watching us in detail
Yes.
talk about Cars and Cars Land and Cars 3. Stay tuned because the summer is just rolling, man. We've got so many movies to talk about, whether it's comedies like Rough Night, we will talk about Transformers The Last Night, Baby Driver, Spider-Man Homecoming.
And we've talked about the other Disney movies that we mentioned in this show.
A lot of
Talked about
Pixar movies. Jeez.
Good Dinosaur and Inside Out and Finding Dory.
Yeah, and Jungle Book, which
And
we're
Jungle
referring
Book.
to in this too. So we are very Disney centric here. We love the Disney movies. Becca, thank you very much for coming back, and we always welcome your return anytime you ever want. Marisa. Since day one, it's just
Yep.
it's my honor.
us.
Well, since day one, it's truly been an honor that that I'm allowed to be here next to you. So and to you, it truly is an honor that you tune in. Keep your comments coming because they've been fantastic lately, folks, and really love them. Whether you agree or disagree with us, really love reading them. Keep on being smart, intelligent, and keep on watching movies. Please go to the theaters. Love this stuff like we do. Until next time, we will see you at the movies. Bye.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.